Hi, I'm Sarah Martin, your Wellness Navigator. Today I'm going to talk to you about reading food labels and what they actually mean. Also, recommendations for sodium, added sugar, fats, and fibers. All recommendations I will be referring to comes from our registered dietitian, Mary Beth Landis, and the ACE Fitness Nutrition Manual. So let's get started. Step-by-step label reading. Starting at the top with serving size, this green section here. Serving sizes in many cases are standardized, but not always. So make sure you are reading the serving size on all labels. Example, cereal. Some cereals are half a cup per serving, and other cereals are 3/4 of a cup per serving. And not just looking at the amount per serving, but also the number of servings per container. The main thing here is that what you might believe to be a single serving packet a lot of times is 2 servings. And be aware that everything following that is based on a single serving. So if you're seeing 250 calories, 7 grams of fat per serving, you may actually be getting 500 calories or 14 grams of fat. Same would go with your added sugar and your sodium. So be sure you're looking at the amount per serving, but also the number of servings per container. Moving to the next section, calories from fat and amount of calories. Calories are how much energy a person gets from food, but calories come in good, nutrient-dense sources of calories and also in what we refer to as empty calories, those calories that have limited to no nutritional value. We as a whole tend to get many of those limited to no nutritional value calories. And the type and quality of calories that we consume does matter to our bodies, our minds, our health, and just how we feel throughout our days. Example, meaning if a 100-calorie packet of almonds or an apple is going to give us those good nutrient dense energy calories versus that 100-calorie packet of cookies that's going to give us that limited to no nutritional value. Now, calories from fat may or may not be useful depending on the source of fat and where the fat is coming from. If the fat is coming from this saturated and trans fat you see in this yellow section that we'll get to next under limit these nutrients, yes, be aware and limit this. But if you're eating nuts or fish and avocado, these types of fats are polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. These are good sources of fat and good sources of energy calories. Although poly and monounsaturated fats are not required to be listed on the food label, if the calories are not coming from your saturated and your trans fats, you can assume they are coming from your poly and monounsaturated fats. The yellow section, limit these nutrients. Now, total fat, again, is going to depend on the source of fat, may or may not matter. Saturated and trans fats are the nutrients we want to limit. This is the section we want to look out for, as well as cholesterol and sodium. Now, the recommended daily intake of sodium is 2,000 milligrams a day. Looking at this food label, there are 470 milligrams in this serving alone. That is about a fourth of your daily sodium intake. It's always a good rule of thumb when it comes to this section of nutrients to limit these nutrients. Now to the red section of dietary fiber. Then we jump to vitamin A, C, calcium, and iron. We want to get enough of these nutrients. So we always want to make sure that we're getting enough vitamin A, C, calcium, and iron. But going back to the dietary fiber, in this label, there's 0 grams of dietary fiber. What we want to look for per serving is at least 2 grams of dietary fiber or more, and more is always better. The recommended amount per day is 25 grams of fiber for women and 38 grams for men per day. The middle section here that you see between the reds is sugar and protein. Now, we do want to make sure that we are getting enough of protein nutrients, but I'm going to talk to you today about the sugars and added sugars. Natural sugars come from milks and fruit. And if you're not getting the sugar from fruit or milk, it is probably added sugar. Also, looking at the ingredients label for these, and I'll talk more about that when we get to that section. but recommended added sugar for women is less than 24 grams, which is less than 6 teaspoons, and 36 grams for men, or 9 teaspoons per day. The blue section of the food label at the bottom is your percent of daily value. Food labels are primarily based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So be aware if you're trying to minimize something. Let's talk about sodium. Up here at the sodium is 20% of the daily value. That is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And as well as if you're trying to maximize something like dietary fiber, you want to make sure that you are adjusting these accordingly to your recommended daily intake. And it varies for everyone. Ingredients. This is a part of the food label that many of us do not pay attention to or look at, but it's a very important part of the food label. It's usually listed just under the primary food label or beside it. So on this, we're going to start with food allergens. So contains wheat ingredients. If there are any food allergens to be listed, it will be listed in that section in a little larger print. Same would go with tree nuts or anything like that. Now, front of the package labeling, such as things that say gluten-free, I would be aware of and still check this ingredient list for words like rye, barley, or wheat, because they all do contain gluten. But on the ingredient list, we like to say first things first, right? Well, this time we're going to say first things are most abundant. So the first ingredient on ingredient list is the most abundant ingredient in what you are getting ready to consume or buy. So looking at those first 3 to 5 ingredients is very important when you're shopping to make sure that it's saying what you think you are buying. In this case, it's Oat Bran, which is not a bad thing for it to be most abundant. But if it says sugar, then just know what you are about to buy is primarily sugar. Ways that you can spot, especially when you're looking at things like breads, shopping for bread and you want to know that one is whole grain. So just below the list here on this list is what you want to look for as that first ingredient. When it comes to breads, what you want to look for is whole grain or whole wheat and things like that. But on this list is a list of whole grains that you want to look for in the first ingredient or the first 2 or 3 ingredients. To know that you are really getting a good whole grain that counts for your recommended daily intake. Also with sugars, there are so many ways to say sugar that when you're looking at an ingredient list, these are all ways, 20 plus ways that sugar could be listed in an ingredient list. To the food label that we're talking about, the third word is sugar. Also, the 6th or 7th word is sugar. And then we have high fructose corn syrup. Those are all saying added sugar in this product. So you can screenshot this or just keep it with you, something like that, if you want to look for these added sugars. Quick ways to spot added sugars is if it says syrup or ends with that OSE. That would just be fast ways to spot sugar, but just be sure that you're checking your ingredient list for all of these added sugars. Also with fats. Now you may be thinking fats are listed in the primary label. Why do I need to look for them in the ingredient list? Well, that's where it gets tricky because food manufacturers are not required to list trans fats if it is under 0.5. So if something has 0.4 trans fat, it will not be listed on that, or does not have to be listed on that primary label, but will be listed in the ingredients list. So you want to look for those things. And then back to this label. So we have partially hydrogenated soybean oil. So that is what things that you want to look for. Also things that you want to look for are palm oil, solid beef fat, butter, coconut oil. You can see on this list. So these are the ones that you're looking for in that, and they all indicate that there are trans and saturated fats. Last part about looking at the ingredient list is that most things inside the grocery store have a long ingredient list, and food manufacturers like to use this long ingredient list to hide things sometimes. So just be sure that you are looking at the entire ingredient list. Another good rule of thumb is that buying things with fewer ingredients is always good. So if something has 5 or 6 ingredients and you know what those ingredients are, you understand them, you can pronounce them, that means you're probably pretty safe buying that product. So please just be sure that you're looking for those things on these ingredient lists. Fewer is better. Front of the box labeling is another technique and tricky thing that manufacturers want to do. And the front of the box labeling is less controlled by the FDA. So as you can see right here on this bread, healthy multigrain, heart healthy. But when you turn this over and you look at the ingredients, it starts with enriched flour or refined grains, things like that. So it is not your whole grain. Also down here on your Raisin Bran, heart healthy. It's bran. You think that has to be good. When you look at the primary label, there are 19 grams of added sugar in this, as well as the fruit snacks. You can see right here, made with real fruit. Now, these things is the things that your kids want, and it's going to be catchy, and that is exactly what these food manufacturers want. Some of them even say 100% real fruit. So just please pay attention and be aware of these marketing hacks and make sure that you're looking at the back of the label as well. That is all for today. Thank you all for listening. Here is your code if you're collecting points. If you have any questions or want any more information, please contact me at welltogether@augustahealth.com.